Today's the day I've been waiting for a long time. Today we're going to find out if this thing fires up. I haven't heard this car run in about a year and a half because it was about that long ago that I pulled the motor out and decided to start up this whole project. And it's been too long. So hopefully I did everything right and hopefully this thing fires up right away. There's a few things I want to show you before we do that. And I'm going to walk you through it now. So we're just going to roll under the car here, and I want to show you guys what I did for my transmission cooler. I mounted one underneath the car. I had a bunch of line left over, and like you don't have to run. This is an AN10, a -10 line, but some of this line came with this cooler. This is just an eBay 9-row cooler, and I bought a cheap 7-inch fan for it. Threw it together. I have two temperature sensors. One's a switch. This is going to turn on the fan when it gets hot enough. And at the other side, I've got the sensor for I have an odometer transmission temperature gauge. So I had to put this brass block in just to have those two sensors work properly in it. But hopefully it works. There is space between the cooler and the floor, so there should be enough airflow, but if it's not, then I gotta find another place to put it. But I just wanted to show you guys that I'm not using the cooler that's in the transmission. It was recommended to me by the guy who built the converter not to use the factory cooler that's in the transmission. And why he recommended that, the guy who built the torque converter, old school guy, I actually sat and talked with him for about an hour or so, and one of the things he asked me was, what are you doing to cool the transmission? And I told him I wasn't sure yet. I was debating whether or not to use an external cooler or the one in the transmission. Right away he said, hands down, mount an external one, don't use the one in the transmission. It's not going to hold up, because you know, your one in the radiator, sorry, it's fine for factory tuned vehicles, and you know, it's designed to work that way. This transmission and this engine are going to be pushed harder than the factory intended it to. So what he was recommending was get it out of there. Don't use the heater, don't use the heat exchanger that's inside the radiator. The theory behind it is you're trying to cool your transmission oil with coolant that is sitting around 190 degrees. Whereas you can use air temperature, which is around, well, being close to the asphalt because I have it mounted underneath the ground, underneath the car. You know, air temp down there by the exhaust and everything could still be 100 degrees, if not a little bit more. But I'm trying to cool it with 100 degree air instead of 190 degree fluid. And the other side of that, you're not running super hot transmission oil through your coolant, like through your radiator, heating up your coolant. The two systems will be fighting each other. So he recommended auxiliary cooler, hands down. So that's what I did. Hopefully it saves the transmission, and because heat's the worst thing for a transmission. It'll be the end of it. So that's what I'm trying. And if I find that fan's running nonstop, or my transmission temperature just keeps climbing, I might have to do either a bigger cooler or mount the cooler somewhere else. I didn't have much room in the front end down here. I couldn't find a good place I wanted to put it. So I decided I'll mount it flat under the floor, keep a gap between it and the floor, and hopefully that fan will pull enough air through it to keep it cool. But if it doesn't work, I'll figure something else out. Other than that, I've got gas in it. I'm just running 94 octane because in Canada that's about the best we got for the most part. E85, all that kind of stuff, we don't have them at every station around here. So 94 octane is what I'm running, just pump gas. I've got oil in it, I've got coolant in it. I put power steering oil in it because I don't want to kill my power steering pump. And the only thing I have left to do is to go through the setup in the Terminator X system. It's going to walk me through how to set it all up. So I got to do that now, and then we try for ignition. Well, it's a little loud in here because of the fan, but if I just read the thing, it says go to setup, go to wizard, go to TPS auto set. Wizard, TPS auto set. Make sure the ignition is on and the engine is not started. Okay. Slowly press the pedal to the floor and slowly release. Do this twice. I did it twice. It was successful. Okay. Just gonna go through this again, just to make sure I've done everything correctly. Just gonna do this again real quick. There's another. Let's do that. Turbo. Okay, I'm going to cycle it off, and then we're going to try and see if it starts. Here I fired it up and knocked the camera right off the car. We had some ignition. That's a start. I think I'm gonna have to change a few things. I don't know if I got my timing off or fuel pressure off. I'm gonna have to play with a few things and see what's going on, and then we'll try it again. Learning. Progress. So on my vitals screen, it's showing my map sensor, the vitals, it's showing up red. So I don't know if there's a problem with the 2.5 bar map sensor I put in. Maybe because it's a cheapie, maybe it's not working right. Maybe I don't have it plumbed in properly. I'm not sure. But I'm wondering if that's why she doesn't want to stay running. It'll sit there and fire and spit and sputter, but it doesn't want to fire up and stay running. And I'm wondering if that's why. So after a few more failed attempts at firing it, it would sputter and spit, but it won't stay running. And it's really smoky in here. I got the door open. My eyes are burning. I think it's getting way too much fuel. And the reason why I know that is I know where all my exhaust leaks are, because there's black. It's black coming out, so it's very sooty. But there's it looks like oil, but it's not oil, because the oil in there's brand new. There's no way it's black. And it smells like gas. But I'll show you. See all the black spots? That's like fuel coming out. So you can see all my leaks. Got a leak there. Yeah, I got leaks everywhere. That's what crappy welds will do for you. Yeah, I got a leak there. That gasket's leaking. Got a few little spots there. So I know where I'm leaking. But I've got raw fuel coming out of this thing, like right at the end of the exhaust. Like that's just fuel. So I don't know if it's because the injectors I've got in this thing, it doesn't give me an option to pick in the menu in the setup, the wizard. I even tried using one of the it had an option for a fuel injector clinic 850cc injector, which is very close to what an 80-pound injector is, but this is just a Siemens Deca cheap injector. But I have a feeling that might be the issue. I'm gonna have to email Holly and find out what they suggest. I'm running the fuel pressure, it's dying down now. I'm losing pressure, but it was sitting at around 60. I feel like 60 was a good number to have it at, but I'm not totally sure, so I'm gonna have to check with them again on that. But it seems like I'm getting way too fuel, it's way too rich. I'm gonna ask them what their suggestions are and try this again. Excuse me. But that's it for tonight, because now it's getting late and I don't want to wake the neighbors. All right, we'll get back at this again tomorrow. Okay, it's been a couple days. I've been doing a lot of research. I've called Holly, talked to them, trying to figure out why this thing doesn't want to stay running, and they've given me recommendations that I've already tried. So unfortunately, you know, this wasn't calling Holly didn't really help me out a whole lot. I got in contact with a local performance shop. They gave me some suggestions, and they actually hooked me up with a guy who has a lot of experience with this stuff. He gave me a few suggestions, and I'm going to try that stuff right now, and we'll try and narrow down what's going on. My suspicion is that my cheap 2.5 bar map sensor that I bought isn't any good. We're going to try and figure out today if that's the reason why, or if I've screwed something else up. But as far as the injectors go, I didn't have any luck punching in my own custom settings for the injectors. So what the guy I got in contact with who knows his stuff about this suggested just picking an injector that's close, which in the wizard setup, there's one labeled Fuel Injector Clinic 850s, which is close to what these things will flow. So I chose that, and I'll show you guys what I'm doing on the laptop here to help better explain what my problem is. So just to fill you in, I did end up buying the cord, the CAN bus adapter cord to USB adapter. This does not come with the Terminator X system, so if you want to be able to plug your laptop in, this is an extra. And that thing's about 50 bucks US. It's not a cheap cord, but if you want to be able to do this, you got to buy it. So this is basically all your vitals and stuff when the engine's running, and this shows you more than what the little handheld unit will show you. And I was having an issue with like the air fuel ratio wasn't bad, but I was getting red lights coming on for map sensors, stuff like that. So which leads me to believe my map sensor wasn't working correctly, and I could not get this thing to stay running, and it was super rich. Like it would, my whole garage would basically be full of exhaust, like deep, thick, dark smoke like exhaust. Like my clothes stink from this. But what I've done is I bypassed the 2.5 bar map sensor. You can see here, that little single bar map sensor hose that comes out the back, the blue one, I've hooked in a vacuum line that I've just routed up over here and just plugged into the side of the intake. And the 2.5 bar map sensor on the back, I unplugged it, that's this here, and I don't know if I have to plug it in, but I just plugged it into the factory single bar map sensor at the back. So that will take that out of the equation. And I went back through the wizard and basically told the wizard that it's not turboed, like I selected just naturally aspirated, and we're just taking some things, some variables out, and then we'll slowly start introducing them back in. And I've changed the injector settings to the 850 fuel injector clinic injectors, even though I'm still running the 80-pound Siemens, but I'm hoping for better results here. Pressure. That's bouncing around a lot, but to be expected. Oh, my eyes are burning. She's burning rich, but she's running. It's running. I had to open the door. I was getting gassed out in here. So it runs off the single bar map sensor, just off the vacuum line, and with putting in the 850, selecting the 850 option in the wizard. So it leads me to believe that I've got an issue going on with the 2.5 bar map sensor, whether it's a bad sensor, or I have another theory, and that's the vacuum port I selected. So I'm gonna pull that sensor off, and I'm gonna check out that vacuum port first to see if there's a problem there, because I think that vacuum port was intended for the brake booster, and I don't know if there's some kind of one-way valve or what's going on with it. But I'm gonna try and pull that off now and see if there's anything alarming there. So you'll see there's the factory map sensor down there, and off this little rubber hose over here I've got the 2.5 bar, and I'm wondering if that vacuum port, if there's a problem with that. I'm gonna pull this stuff apart and take a look at it, see what's going on. So if you look down inside the hole there that the map sensor was in, it looks like this thing is divided, because I stuck a zip tie inside that vacuum port over there. I stuck a zip tie right in here to see if I could see it in the hole there, and I can't. And then I noticed that this chamber is like divided. This vacuum port comes up alongside here, but this half that the factory map sensor gets its reading from is not connected to this side. So I don't know if there's a valve or something inside the intake that prevents that from getting a reading. I don't know. But I'm going to try. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drill that hole a little bit bigger. I've got my vacuum and stuff here, and I'm going to drill it with the vacuum so I don't lose too much of anything inside. And I'm going to put the 2.5 bar map sensor in that hole, and we'll see if it gets a different reading or any kind of reading. Well, I couldn't get my drill on it straight, so after drilling it, it was a little bigger than I wanted, the hole. So the sensor was a little loose. But a zip tie and some gasket maker should be good. Hopefully. I'm a bit of a hack that way. So now I'm going to change the parameters in the computer, and we'll see if this thing will run on that map sensor. crappy. So hooking the 2.5 bar map sensor back in didn't work. It's still doing the same thing it did before, but when I bypass it and run it off the 1 bar built in, it'll run. It idles great. It sounds great, which is good. I have oil pressure. Everything looks good when it was on the 1 bar map sensor. So I've got that I can be happy about, but now I got to figure out why on the 2.5 bar map sensor it's not working. I'm leaning towards the fact that I cheaped out and bought a no-name one as opposed to the GM one. So my next step is going to be buying a GM 2.5 bar map sensor. I'll put that in, and hopefully that's my problem. So, because I guess putting it in the factory hole didn't change anything, so there's probably nothing wrong with where I had it hooked up before. Process of elimination, I'm going to start with the next logical thing, which is probably the sensor itself. So that's all for today. I'm happy it runs. I've got one leak that I can see, which is just off of one of my drains for the turbo, right where the fitting, it was a fitting I was screwing around with, having a hard time getting it tight to begin with, right down on the oil pan bung. But other than that, I am really happy with what's going on right now. I'm a little disappointed about the fact that it's not running on the 2.5 bar, but at least I know I can put it on the single bar and at least run it and drive it. If I have to drive it down to the guy who's going to tune it, he's the guy who's going to dyno the car. He knows a lot more about this than I do, but he doesn't make house calls, and the car is not ready to move yet. But I'm going to try a few more things first before we get to that point. But that's it for this video. Till next time.